Currently, the international landscape is experiencing profound and complex changes. In the meanwhile, the global economy remains sluggish, with rising unilateralism and protectionism, alongside the spread of deglobalization, which leaves industrial and supply chains highly vulnerable. And recently, the sub-session on international relations of the 8th Taihe Civilizations Forum was held in Beijing, with the theme of navigating the changing international political and economic landscape for security and development. The forum has attracted experts and scholars from various countries. And during the forum, China Talk had an exclusive interview with South African ambassador to China to share his views on China-Africa cooperation, as well as the solutions to the current global challenges. Good afternoon, Ambassador. It's a great pleasure to have this interview with you.
Thank you.
From your perspective, what are the major challenges in the global geopolitics and what are the root causes of these challenges?
Yeah, there are some few challenges which we are facing as the international community, as I've said earlier. First one is that one of growing unilateralism, the growing rivalry between the major countries, which is affecting not just them, but the whole of society. And these are the challenges which we are facing when we need each other more, when we need to work with each other more closely, because we are facing greater threats than physical wars. We are facing pandemics. We are facing growing poverty and inequality. We are facing the effect of climate change and disasters which are associated with this. And all these major challenges, they require us to unite and work together so that we can have a better world for all, a better world for humanity, and what you call in China a shared future for mankind. That's what basically we need to move away from current trends of short-termism, unilateral action, war instead of peace, and work for peace, because when we have peace, we can have space for development. And peace and development are mutually reinforcing each other. And this world, as President Xi Jinping has said, is big enough. Mother Earth is big enough for all of us. We can have a happy life for all global citizens.
I have heard your speech just now that you have mentioned many times that we need to reform the international system like the United Nations. So how should we do? What should we do to do this reform?
I think for us, because whenever we talk about reform, those who are thinking that they're in position of control and power, they always feel now they don't want to release their power. We must also learn from history. The current global order post-Second World War is not the First World Order. Before, there was a League of Nations. Why did the League of Nations fail or collapse? Because those who were the winners of the First World War, they thought they should control everybody, control everything. But when there were problems between themselves, they couldn't resolve them. When there were problems with their friends, they couldn't take action against their friends who were breaching this international law. And that's how the League of Nations failed. And then we have a San Francisco meeting, which led to the formation of the current United Nations. The critical thing is that we cannot afford to collapse the current international platform like the current UN, which we have. What we are saying is that what is important is that we should all agree that it needs to be reformed, because the conditions which existed in 1945 are no more the same as today. The conditions then was that conflicts were caused between physical fighting between the states. There are new global threats today, beyond just physical fighting of two neighbors or two countries. We are faced with challenges of development. The United Nations, we agreed that we should have these 2030 goals of achieving these UN Sustainable Development Goals. We are lagging behind. But these are the goals we should uplift every nation. And they are very noble goals, so we cannot abandon those things. So that's why we need to strengthen the UN system to be representative, to be inclusive, and take into account of the current realities, particularly those of developing South and developing nations. It can't just be the developed North. Yes, we appreciate the developed North. We'll always engage the developed North. But as developing South, we feel that we should also, our voice must be heard. And it is in that context then that I feel very strongly, and South Africa, we feel very strongly that the UN system must be protected but must be reformed. The first one to be reformed is the UN Security Council. If you check, for instance, what is the problem today? We've got a lot of crises which we are not able to resolve easily. The war or conflict in Europe, we're not able, because it is a conflict between NATO, which is the Western superpowers, and Russia. So the two major groups of the UN Security Council can't agree. So it's not just a simple thing between Ukraine and Russia. It's a conflict between the NATO and Russia, NATO expansion and Russia rejecting that expansion. So because these are the permanent members of the UN Council, they can't solve the crisis. That's why countries like China, African countries, South American countries are trying to bring solutions to end that war. Because unilateralism and war itself won't solve problems. What we need is more diplomacy, more talking, finding solutions, because we cannot end war nowadays with another war. So those are the things basically we're saying that we need this reform. The reform must take the interests of all nations. It's difficult for some of the countries because we can see as we talk to them that they may feel that they are losing power. No one wants to lose power. But how long that power will last? It's not sustainable. But inclusivity is more sustainable. War destroys. Peace builds. And we need now more building than destruction. And that's why we're saying, let's join hands, sit down, and slowly build a peaceful and a prosperous world for all who live in this beautiful planet Earth, instead of engaging ourselves in unproductive trade competition, physical wars, sanctions, unilateral sanctions, the blatant ignoring of international rules of engagement, which is a harm to all. And that's why we appeal that let's sit together. Let's look at the current and let's look at the future. Let's not focus on the past. Yes, we can learn from the past, but you cannot sit on the past forever. We have to look what are the current realities and what are we likely to face going forward. The COVID-19 pandemic was an eye-opener for all of us. That nations, because they were inward-looking, they closed everything, they were protecting only their citizens, yet the scientists were telling us, pandemic is not a national problem, it's a global problem. We need to solve it together. The climate challenge we are facing is not a national problem. You can do whatever, but alone you cannot succeed. But if we don't succeed and keep on blaming each other, then we may find that we be extinct. We can all be extinct. And no one wants that. We want sustainability. We want to save our planet Earth. We want to live a better life.
Earlier this month, the president of South Africa has paid a state visit to China, and the two leaders agreed to elevate bilateral relations between our two countries. So, how would you view the elevation of the bilateral ties will contribute to the cooperation between our two countries?
Yeah. First, let me just talk about the successful state visit. South Africa and China shares very long history of political ties, even long before our freedom in 1994. It is that political ties, particularly between the Communist Party of China and the African National Congress in South Africa, as major parties, that were forged this friendship during the most difficult times. And it is through that political relations and political trust that we have developed this strong bond between our people and our two nations. This has helped us, first, to have strong economic ties. China is the largest trading partner of South Africa by far in the world. It's followed, I think, by Germany, then USA, and other nations. But from the African continent, South Africa is the largest trading partner of China by far, because most of the production in Africa is mainly from South Africa. Although we are now trying to decentralize production to other countries through the implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. So in terms of the elevation of this relationship, it means a lot for both our peoples. It means a lot in terms of greater economic cooperation. This is what both of our leaders, President Xi Jinping and President Cyril Ramaphosa, have urged us to do. It means we have greater cooperation in the new economies, new digital economy, new technologies which are emerging, which will benefit not only our economies but our youth so that they can be competitive in the future. It means that trade will increase between the two nations. They save not only in terms of physical goods, but also in services. It means we'll cooperate with investment between the two countries. You know, South African corporations, big corporations, are investing heavily in the Chinese economy. And Chinese companies, more and more Chinese companies have invested in the South African economy. So this bilateral trade and investment is going to assist to uplift the lives of our people, because our government are not just by us about serving the people. The bilateral relations ties with China, it means the people-to-people exchanges, the training, scientific cooperation, the medical cooperation, the tourism. We love Chinese tourists. It's gonna boom between the two nations. So that's why we're working now very hard, because our leaders have said they don't want to have paper agreements. They want practical agreements which have got practical effect in improving the lives of our people.
Earlier this month, FOCAC has taken place here in Beijing. So how would you say the achievements of this year's FOCAC?
The China-Africa relations is very important. As you know, our foreign policy as South Africa is based on ensuring that we have got a prosperous country, South Africa, peaceful and a prosperous Africa and a better world. So the relations with China and Africa are the relations of mutual respect. They are relations of mutual benefit. So the recent FOCAC, the elevation, for instance, of the status of bilateral relations with all economic countries at strategic level is very important, because no other country has done this to African nations except China. The expected outcomes of the FOCAC is more focused on how do we deal with the issue of investment, technology transfer, particularly how do we deal with assist some of the African countries to better utilize their agricultural productivity and scientific application of modern scientific knowledge in terms of agricultural production and processing. How do we assist African countries to, because they've got these rich mineral resources, to beneficiate them close to source? Those are the agreements which are coming out of the focus. China has played a significant role in building the infrastructure, because without infrastructure, you can't have your economy running. Connecting the cities, connecting the countries, connecting the neighbors, unlike what happened during the colonial period, where the infrastructure was just from extraction to the port. Now we're creating trading infrastructure within the countries and between the countries of Africa. And China has been playing a leading role in this. And that's why so many head of state from Africa attended the recent China Africa Cooperation Forum in Beijing, in recognition that this relationship is a win-win for the developing South and developing nations.
Okay, thank you so much, Ambassador, for your insightful ideas. Thank you.
谢谢你。